Hi everyone, welcome to the Monkey Patching Podcast, where we go bananas about all things Math Olympiad, MCP, and more. My name is Marimo, joined together always by my sidekick, I don't know sidekick, but my co-host. Definitely.
Beautiful co-host.
Beautiful, gorgeous co-host Bart. Hey Bart.
Hey Bruno.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Doing good as well.
Actually, I tested out, we discussed the last episode about ChatGPT agent mode, and it got released this morning. I saw it like an hour before we just went live.
Oh,
tested it out.
You tested it out already? Anything you can share already? Or
so what I tested it with, so it's very limited, of course. But I have this pitch deck, basically a PowerPoint presentation. And I asked it to improve this pitch deck, so very vague prompt, right? It took like half an hour, like a shitty long time. It was not great, the outcome, but it did create a new slideshow.
Did it create a new one?
It did create a new slideshow. And
was it like, because I feel like for Gemini, I've asked it to create slides, but the slide was like bullet points, half, and then the other half was like empty. Or
no,
was like
it looked quite good, but of course it started from an existing slideshow and it creates something proprietary, I think something JavaScript based, and it has a viewer now in ChatGPT to basically have a slideshow. But it does a lot of web browsing. You see a bit of the process. Like it looks like, I'm not sure if it's actually working like that, but it looks like it starts up a virtual machine. And you see a bit, you can follow along what it's doing. So it's generating code, it's looking up references online on how to create a good pitch deck, like these kind of things. And like I was not super impressed with the actual output, but also my prompt was not very targeted or informative, of course. But it actually it also gave me a bit of a feeling on how I work with Claude Code, where you can actually say look this up, improve these documents, and then it starts doing it for you, and you can follow the progress. But this is a bit more of an accessible way, like really to the chat user interface, and still you see a sort of a representation of this, what is happening in this virtual machine that also helps you understand a bit of what is the thought process here. And I'm interested to see to test a bit more with it. Apparently, I think it's 40 requests per cycle. I think it's a monthly cycle then. So I just used one. But it took me half an hour or so. I'm not gonna do a lot of those in a day.
This agent is it's more generic, right? Like it's not just for PowerPoint slides. You can also
no, it's very generic.
It's very generic, right? Yeah.
And I don't actually know if it has access to MCP. Because then you could, there's an MCP server for Google Slides or something, then you could actually have more... Could actually build Google Slides for me.
Yeah, and I saw that as well. I think it's going to kill a lot of startups as well.
Potentially, yeah. Potentially.
Yeah. Which is actually not that new. Even when ChatGPT started with the whole... Every time they release a new feature, we'll kill a couple hundred startups as well, so...
Yeah, I think you need to be very strong in the domain that you're in, have a very strong domain knowledge. Otherwise, you could just bypassed by an extension on ChatGPT.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, cool. I've been using more Claude Code, so I feel like it's been I feel like I'm really trying to use it more. I feel like it's fun. But sometimes you can tell it steers off. Like sometimes I tell it one thing, and then I say, okay, let's just make sure it works. I'm going to delete all the save files and all these things, the databases, rerun it. And then no, it's not working. Or then I actually look at the code and the previous prompts, it kind of forgot, it ignored, I said, I wanted to do this, this, and this. And then it just kind of found a shortcut and then it did it and it worked. But then when I looked, it's no, that's not what I want.
Yeah. You need to find a bit of a workflow with it. Huh?
Yeah, indeed. But I think even if I have to go more on the specific, I can still use AI, on Cursor or something. But even if I have to go for Cursor now, I still feel like the 80% you can just do with Claude. All just doing this and this. And so I'm figuring out a workflow here that works for me. It's been fun. All right.
Maybe before we jump into the news of the week, we have some holidays coming up. So for the next 3 weeks, we're going to see a little bit how we do things. But we're going to get back to that, right?
Yes.
There will be some updates in the coming 3 weeks, but maybe a slightly different format.
We'll keep you posted. All right. Then what we have for this week, we have Marimo So Marimo is rolling out molab, a free cloud workspace where users can spin up and share its reactive Python notebooks from any browsers. Molab is a cloud-hosted Marimo notebook workspace that lets you rapidly experiment on data using Python and SQL, the team notes, and it's available at no cost. So, Marimo, I think I'm not sure if we talked about Marimo before.
I'm not sure if we did it on the podcast, but you and me definitely talked about it. Yeah,
we definitely talked about it. But basically, Marimo is like it's, let's say, Jupyter notebooks from like
Steroids?
version 2, on steroids. Like they really rethink how notebooks work. What are the things they don't like? So, for example, cells. Like if you have cell B that depends on cell A, and cell A updates the value, cell B would also rerun. They also, because of that, so you basically have everything reactive, right? And you can also set up the cells in a grid format, and you can have plots, and you can have sliders on the plot. And when you update that value, then everything else updates. So you can kind of create dashboards as well. So I've even seen some people saying that it can replace things like Streamlit. And now they've released molab, which is Mo is from Marimo, I think. Yeah, Mo for Marimo, and then lab is like Google Colab or like laboratory.
Jupyter
Lab, indeed. So basically, it's like, and that's actually, they make a lot of analogies with Google Cloud, Google Colab, right? So basically, they want to give a very, very simple experience for people to try out, right? You can still add it very easily. You just have the URL, molabmarimo.io/notebook/ blah, 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 and you can add it locally. But then if you don't want to have the whole setup, you can just very easily just go to Marimo Lab or molab and then just interact with all these things there. I think it's cool, a little release, and maybe people that are learning Python that want to try an easy setup without downloading everything, all the scaffolding and all these things. Maybe that's something you can do. One thing though, because Marimo did have a web, like how do you say, WASM version. So like I could actually already share a WASM version of my notebook, but I guess there was a lot of limitations in terms of dependencies, in terms of size of the notebook, right? And I think this also doesn't have that. So yeah. What do you think? Have you used Marimo before, Bart?
Like I played around with it, but not for actual projects. But what I like especially is it looks better than notebooks, but the reactivity really is a big step up. So for people that don't use notebooks that much, like if you would say like you have a calculation somewhere depending like on a variable x and x is equal to 2, but that x value like is defined in a cell before the current thing that you're doing. Like if you update x, your current cell is not updated. But then Marimo, if you have something depending on x and you change x, like everything updates automatically. So you're always more or less quote unquote up to date. And the UI looks a lot better, I think.
Also, if you commit Marimo notebooks, in the end, it's just like Python functions. Like so each cell is a function with a decorator. So
nice.
Like to
didn't know.
Commit stuff. Yeah. If you want to commit stuff, it's easier, right? Like you don't have all the metadata there, and because everything's reactive, you don't have to make sure like the outputs are always going to be reliable.
And committing notebooks is hard because it's JSON in the end. Like, and the JSON is hard to compare.
There's a lot of metadata.
A lot of metadata. So yeah, interesting to see what this cloud offering. I mean, it is of course like what I see this a bit is this is their commercial offering, right? Like they have an open source notebook environment, but this is their commercial offering for it. I think it's good of them to start from a really like a very strong notebook offering and then build a commercial offering, because we've seen a lot of commercial offerings around more or less rehashed Jupyter notebooks, right, in the past.
Yeah,
I haven't really seen one of them being super successful. And they actually raised, I think they raised around 5 million not that long ago, end of 2024. I think this is probably one of the results coming from that. I looked a little bit into the discussions on this. There's still some open questions on if you look at the blog post, like that notebooks are public by default. You just share a link, which sounds a bit weird. It sounds a bit like pseudo security, like there is access if you have the link. But I think this is the very first version, and stuff needs to be hashed out. But it looks it's good to have a new promising notebook environment, and especially, and I haven't tested this out, they state that it's also AI first. Current notebook environments don't really allow very well to integrate with AI assisted tooling. This might be a game changer if you start something from scratch and like rethink the notebook.
Yeah. I also think
to see how it fits in AI.
They start appealing more to beginners as well, like people that just want to give this a try. They lower the barrier, so I think it's gonna be fun. The only thing that I didn't like about Marimo, and this is not molab, is Marimo, is that back then the VS Code integration wasn't super mature, let's say, and that meant that I couldn't use my favorite AI friend to So I think that was like, okay, if I need to build a browser. And I think at the time I wanted to, the use case was like, okay, I'm using notebooks, but it's not very experimental. Like I kind of know what I want to do. I just wanted to build a report and I wanted to have the AI stuff. So this was a while ago. They probably changed this by now. But in any case, I think it's really good to see just more diversity, right? I think a lot of people hate notebooks as well. And I think they're trying to do something about it. So I think that's cool. That's cool. All right. What else do we have?
OpenAI researcher Alexander Wei reveals an experimental model that solved 5 of 6 2025 International Math Olympiad problems, good enough for a human-level gold medal. He stresses that progress here calls for going beyond the reinforcement learning paradigm of clear-cut, verifiable rewards, hinting at fresh reinforcement learning and scaling tricks. So this is the very first time that an AI model got a gold level performance at the Math Olympiads, which is special in its own.
Congrats to the AI.
Sorry?
Congrats to the AI.
Congrats to the AI. Apparently, there are six questions during this session. It was able to solve 5 of them. It's using a new quote unquote advanced model of their reasoning model. It's not gonna be public. That's why the model that they're using, at least not for the coming time. Also interesting is that since I think this morning or yesterday evening, DeepMind also announced that they also participated and they got exactly the same result.
Really?
In terms of scores, they also were able to solve 5 of 6 problems. And there's also a little bit of a kerfuffle on how it got announced. So DeepMind apparently waited for the certification to be formal, but also to have the actual humans get a bit of a spotlight before actually announcing that their AI model won something. This was apparently also asked by the organization to wait for the certification of the results, but OpenAI already announced it like, I don't know, 3-4 days ago, something like that, before the certification actually happened.
Okay.
So there's a bit of...
I didn't care again about the request. It just did it. But then when you say like to let the people get a bit of spotlight, you mean the competitors?
The actual humans, yeah. The actual humans, yeah.
They didn't want to discourage. But like, but OpenAI didn't listen to them. They just did it.
That's what it seems like, yeah. That's what the kerfuffle in the community is about.
And Google, did Google wait as well?
Google
had the same. Yeah. Google waited. So Google's the
DeepMind lab, right?
Yeah, DeepMind labs.
Wow.
But I think also I think I also skipped through. I think you also needed to submit like the proofs, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just like give the answer and if it's like hallucinated or something, it's fine. They also had to. It's like a human, right? You have to explain all the steps and why this is this and this and that. So it's
so maybe to and I think OpenAI followed a little bit of a similar approach. Is that they do this year end to end, where so in natural language, where last year they tried to convert the assignments to something that is more easily readable by a system. So, for example, DeepMind last year they developed Lean for it, which is a language to express these problems in. Not sure if they developed it or that they just translated it to it, and then tried to solve those Lean translations. But here, the approach that both OpenAI and DeepMind is taken is that they start from the English problem and then end up with the actual answer.
And what is the language, the intermediate language? What you say?
Well, that's what they tried last year. They're not doing that anymore this year.
But it's like a different language that is easier for the machine to understand, or what?
Exactly.
Is it?
Yeah.
But is it English still? But it's just more detailed, or is it like completely different?
No, it's completely different. Like I think it's something to express something in symbolic terms.
I see.
I think it's called what DeepMind used last year is called Lean, but I'm not sure what OpenAI did.
Okay, very cool. Does that make you feel like the AGI is coming? the general intelligence, the true AI is coming, Bart?
Well, I think there's a whole lot of discussion, but it is a big one because AI has never been able to do this to get a gold level performance. OpenAI has been hinting that they developed DeepThink for this, that they will migrate this to mainstream at some point. Whether or not this means anything for AGI, I don't know. Whether or not this means that we're becoming a lot better at solving these type of problems through AI, I can think that is a reality, right?
Yeah, that's true. But I also think, like, what does it mean for the general person? I think, okay, you have a model that has better reasoning, at least for math, right? That's the thing also, like, is it narrow? Is it better narrow, like at a scope? Or, I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's hard for me to, like, I see these things I think is really cool. Like, you see that it's moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that is the
But then
main
it's like,
takeaway.
how's this gonna get to me? In a few, in a few months, like, how am I gonna see this?
I think for us, we shouldn't participate in the Math Olympiad anymore.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on it because it's also saying like, oh, it's cool that I can do this. I was like, well, most people cannot get a gold medal in the Math Olympiad either, right? Like, it's the same.
Well, what I'm interested about is like is also like the development cost, but also like the actual run cost for this. And both
That's true.
OpenAI and DeepMind are not disclosing anything on it, so I think the run cost for this, the inference cost, was probably huge.
Yeah, probably, and probably this is not gonna be open to every ChatGPT friend, right? It's probably gonna be for the best friends.
Well, for now, yes, but I think probably 2 years from now, this is going to be easy peasy.
True. True.
So,
Yeah, that's true. I do feel like a lot of times when you see something like this and then you see that it's possible, then you see a lot of people making it accessible. And so, indeed, I agree with you. Should we move on to the next one?
yes. What do we have?
We have Knostic researchers scanned the web and found that thousands of model context protocol servers are live and wide open, leaking to inventories. Anyone who asks. And I quote, we identified a total of 1,862 MCP servers exposed to the internet, and every audited sample allowed unauthenticated access. I also took a look at this. So basically what they did, as I understood, they kind of did some smart search to see what servers they actually had MCP servers. So like they look for keywords or they look for routes, and they somehow fingerprinted this stuff. So they kind of track what are the things that were there, and then basically they found out that there's a lot of stuff that is basically open. Like they also mentioned that MCP specification was not really focused on the authentication part, but then they found that there's a lot of MCP servers that basically are out there in the open. So big security risks for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, I think that's a bit the alert that they're raising. That with the general search of the quote-unquote World Wide Web, probably a very small portion of that, they found a lot of open MCP servers. Basically, by searching, they use Shodan, which is a specific search engine for this. They also open sourced some material too, so you can reproduce this to some extent. But a lot of these MCP endpoints, they are easy to find because they often follow the default. So let's say if you use MCP SDKs, like you get an automatic endpoint on /MCP, for example. Yeah. And if you scan port 80s for /MCP, it's probably an MCP agent. And then you try to connect to it and you get some response back where you say it's a JSON RPC message, which is typically used by MCP. And like 1 + 1 in that case is basically means you're talking to an MCP agent.
Yeah.
Or an MCP server. I think the challenge, I think it's good that they're raising this concern. I think what they're mentioning is that the MCP protocol itself doesn't have anything around security. It doesn't have anything around access management. There is no authentication in place. It's just a protocol to talk between a client and a server. It's as simple as that. I think at some point it would be good if there's an extension to the protocol that by default adds something around authentication. And I understand why they didn't, right? Like you want to optimize, you want to be very good at this communication between client and server. But at the same time, what you see is you get a lot of people using this, which maybe are not experts on this.
Yeah.
And then like being very opinionated on how do I do authentication? How do I do security around this? Because you basically need to bring that yourself. And that becomes hard if you are not an expert on it. At the same time, while I think it's good that they're raising the alert, I think also, to be honest, these, what was it, 1,800 or something MCP servers?
1,862.
Yeah, if they are not secured, it's a risk. I mean, you risk to leak some internal APIs or to leak internal data. But at the same time, I think of these 1,862, probably 1,800 are just like projects that people do themselves to get some stars on GitHub, right?
Yeah, true.
It's very easy these days to just like have a very simple prototype, play around with it, deploy for free on whatever service. And I think a lot of these that they find are probably something like that.
That's true.
Because I can't, at the same time, even though auth is not simple, but any serious company that deploys an MCP service, they're going to think of this, right?
Yeah, I would be surprised if they didn't, right? Exposing stuff like this.
Yeah, it's a bit like saying like, oh, we found a fast API server, but there is no authentication on it. I mean, the problem is not fast API, right? The problem is the person implementing this.
Yeah, that's true. I think, but when I was reading this as well, like I think it echoes a bit what you said, I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, that a lot of people using these things, they don't care necessarily about privacy. Maybe that's the difference, right? I feel like this is so, how do you say, it's so in everyone's face. People that don't necessarily think of security first, then maybe people just jump on it. So I think that's the only way that I can see. Like maybe there's a group of engineers that they just wanted to move fast. They just did things without thinking it through or without consulting with the, I don't know.
Sure, it's possible. Yeah.
It's possible, but I agree. I think
the big incentive you have as a company deploying this or as a developer deploying this, an MCP server versus a web API, like if someone abuses your MCP server, you rack up a big bill in tokens, right?
Yeah. I think that's
that's a very good incentive to not just let everybody access it.
But I think that's probably the big, I mean, even if you don't care about the security, I think that's even just that, right? Like
exactly.
Just to save up a few costs there. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And maybe question for you. After MCP came out, I heard a lot of criticism about the protocol. But to be honest, like I'm kind of like going for the ride, but I don't fully understand. Like I feel like some people are very opinionated about MCP is a bad protocol. It's badly written, it's badly motivated. And I was like, okay, I kind of understand some of the things you say, but I don't know. Like everyone's using MCP, right?
Yeah, it's actually one of the news items we have. But I think on every protocol, you have people that say this could be better, that could be better. I've implemented it 3 times now myself, something like that. I think it's easy to understand. I think that is worth a lot. There are some edge cases in the protocol that are in practical terms not being used a lot. There are things missing that you need to bring your own knowledge, like authentication, like these things. But what we've seen is that there has been a huge adoption, right, on MCP.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like there's a few more protocols. I even heard of ACP the other day. But there's also the agent to agent.
It's a bit of a different,
but I still feel like the MCP is the most popular one by far. So I don't know. All criticisms aside, like still the most popular. Everyone's using it. Seems
especially for this for basically more or less tool use, right? Agent to agent is a little bit of a different focus. It's really like agent to agent communication.
Yeah, indeed.
And these agents can still be using MCP under the hood. But maybe a good segue here,
yes,
is that AWS has opened a developer preview of an MCP server that let foundation models turn plain English requests into live AWS CLI calls. I quote, "The server provides secure access control through AWS identity and access management credentials and pre-configured API permissions, ensuring agents operate within strict guardrails." So this is cool news, actually. This was published a few days ago. And AWS basically has their own MCP server that you can, I think, run locally. And it allows you to basically, based on just English language, or let's say natural language, generate interactions with their CLI.
Hmm.
And you could do stuff like, and whether or not it's a good idea from a maintenance perspective, but you could do stuff like, please generate this bucket for me with these permissions in that region. Or, and that's maybe a bit, like maybe you need to then quickly get in this discussion, maybe you need infrastructure as code, but I'm gonna let that, let's not go into that discussion for now. But you can also do stuff like, oh, I see that that this container is failing. Can you provide me the logs? So these type of interactions become very, very intuitive, right?
I think if anything that is read, right? Read the buckets available. Read this, read that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah,
Right?
and you can very easily switch between where you would have, like, you read the logs and you see, oh, it's this resource, there's something wrong, and you need to go to a different view in their web UI. But here you can just do that in natural language to basically gather information and to understand what is going wrong and to potentially fix that.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, yeah. Again, I think it's a very good idea. I wouldn't go as far as creating stuff yet. That's where a bit. I don't know. I feel like creating stuff, I think I would still be a bit more careful. But if it's reading stuff, yeah, like read away. If you're gonna write code, you're gonna ask the agent to prepare something like this. It's good to know what kind of buckets you have, what is the structure, what services you already have up, what are the logs for this if something failed, right? Like I think giving more information is never bad. So.
And apparently it's very good. I've heard someone that actually tested it. Apparently it's very good also to generate syntactically correct commands. So it has some guardrails in place. I haven't looked at the code. I don't know how to do it, but they have probably some, like, this is the valid schema for CLI interactions. So it only gives back actual working commands, which is a nice thing, right?
Yeah, it's a good already step forward. One thing I saw, and I thought this was going to be like that, but it's different. They also have a very simple Lambda wrapper for MCP servers as well now. And I
you
forgot,
can deploy
like,
an MCP server there, you mean?
yeah, in a Lambda.
Yeah.
So it's very, very easy. So like Lambda functions in AWS is like serverless functions, right? So people that are not in the know, let's say. So basically, you have a machine that is off, and then as soon as you make the request, that machine it turns on and it just executes what you want, and then it turns off again.
Without authentication.
Without authentication. But sometimes you need the AWS stuff, no? To use the Lambda. So the authentication is on the Lambda side, not on the MCP side, right? Yeah. So they made it easy just basically if you want to create a quick MCP server there to use these Lambda functions that kind of encapsulates everything. So I also saw there was some things like that, there. But use authentication.
Cool. But I mean, this is another argument to say, like, MCP is very, very quickly becoming the standard. Right.
Indeed.
If big players like AWS choose to do the effort to expose their whole CLI interactions through MCP, I mean, those are big signs, right?
Indeed. And I think, like I said, like agent to agent does exist and has existed for a while now. But like for a while, it didn't really catch on much. I remember even when I looked into agent to agent versus MCP, and I remember even that back then, because it was when agent to agent was announced, people were saying like, yeah. Google announced this protocol, but no one's implementing it yet. So you couldn't do anything with it. So it's like, okay, it's cool idea. But it wasn't really something that was really impacting you as much. And I feel like MCP is really everywhere.
I think agent to agent is also like, it's a use case that we see less for a developer that's developing on their laptop. Like you're not gonna...
True.
Maybe like if you're doing something in Cloud and you have parallel agents running, maybe they even use agent to agent between them. But I think MCP is very close to what everybody does because it integrates natively in your ChatGPT chat window, right?
Yeah, but the thing is also MCP is flexible enough that you could have, I mean, it's a different architecture, I understand, but you could also use MCP to have two agents talk to each other, like if one agent is a tool of another agent. Right?
True. Yeah.
So it's like, it's not like if you need agents communicating with each other, you need to have agent to agent. So I feel like, and that's where I want to actually try a bit more the agent to agent to see what are the use cases that you definitely use agent to agent. What are the cases that you can use both, but maybe one is better than the other because it's a bit of an awkward setup. And what are the use cases that only MCP can go. But again, back then when I looked into it, it wasn't very implemented yet, widely implemented. But I heard since then, like in the past weeks that it is way more mature. Like there are a lot of more places that implement agent to agent. So I'm very curious about that. Shall we move on to the next topic?
Yes.
All right. So we have Pedro Kedrosky argues that runaway AI data center spending is now large enough to move US macro stats and rival the railroad boom of the 1800s. He estimates that, and I quote, AI Capex can be 2% of what US GDP was in 2025, effectively adding nearly full percentage point to growth on its own. I think what this is alluding to, and I glanced a bit, I'll look at you a bit because I think you're more qualified to talk about this, but they're kind of seeing how much the expenditure on AI data centers is this year, and I think again, like we mentioned, the reasoning model, right? They probably use a lot of energy to train, but also to do inference as well, and they see that a lot of money is being invested on AI data centers in the US, right?
Yeah. So the estimates, they are that up to 2% of GDP now is capital expenditure on AI, which is huge. And if you compare that, so he's making the comparison here to railroads and the end 1800s, which was around 6% of GDP, telecommunications, which was around 1% of GDP in 2020. That AI data centers are now up to 2%. The exact percentages are a bit hard to define. What he's basing the analysis on is a bit like what is the total amount of sales of NVIDIA, what percentage is that of total AI-related sales, and then applying an economic multiplier to it. But basically means like if you have these sales, if you have these data centers, you also have upstream things that are happening. There are fab labs being created, downstream, so you have workers doing things. So it's more than just the cost of these goods. And estimates are that we're now at 2% in the US on GDP. Which basically, and GDP for people, like most people notice, but like it's a bit like a metric that says like, this is how big our economy is. You see it a bit like that. And 2% of the size of the US economy is now going to AI data centers. I guess it is what it is. Yeah. It is. What you see with these things is that it's an unprecedented thing, right? Like there's only a few things in history where you see like suddenly there we have this big shift in GDP. Because 2% on GDP is big, right?
I also saw that there was a comment somewhere, like I think it was in China, that they were trying to constrain a bit, because even in China they were saying like every Chinese province is now trying to build an AI data center, but they all actually need it, right? Like it's a bit like everyone's going in the right direction, but it doesn't make sense, quote unquote. And I think the other thing they mentioned is that AI data centers is something that you have to maintain. There's also other costs, long running, right? Like you have to update the hardware. You have to make sure that everything is in a good state. It's not just a one-off.
Well, to me, I think that is not necessarily a difference with like the other examples he gives, like railroads or telecommunications. I think the difference is though that this type of hardware is typically short-lived, right? Like if you compare it to telecommunications or railroad infrastructure, like the lifetime of this is way shorter. Which also like asks some questions like what does this do to long-term GDP impact? But it is an interesting trend, and I think it kind of confirms like what everybody feels like. AI is becoming this very big thing, and we don't know exactly what to expect and what it will mean for the job markets. But at the same time, there's already so much investment going into that. And there are some discussions as well, like where that this might also have some negative side effects, like where before you would see funding going into like of these big companies like Google, like Meta, like OpenAI, like XAI, funding of them going into venture capital, like basically supporting new startups and creating new, while now they invest in their own infrastructure. And because it's such a big cost, so you have this shift of capital flow that might also like have a more longer effect on the economy. There are also people that are worried that this is very much a hype. And what do you do with it after when the hype dies down? But we also have like the other side, like you saw this a bit like with telecommunications in the dot-com bubble, where there was a lot of investment in telecommunications, and then the dot-com bubble happened, and then a lot of these companies basically died. But it meant that you had this infrastructure still in place that was basically you could buy it almost for free, and you had actually a lot of new startups getting this value out of it. So I think even if it is a hype, it's maybe not a loss from a value point of view.
I see. But then, do you think this could happen also with the data centers if the lifetime of the technology, let's say the hardware,
I think, yeah, that is the challenge here, right?
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think in a way it's not surprising, but on the other way, there are a lot of points here that were raised, like the comparison and like the lifetime and all these things, and the fact that people are moving in that direction, but maybe without coordination, right? Do we all need to do these things? Is there? So I don't know. It's an interesting problem that I hadn't thought about, to be honest.
Yeah, to me it's a bit of a confirmation. Like this is economic confirmation that what we all see happening as becoming a very big thing in the future world. You also see it in the economic metrics playing out.
Indeed. Yeah. What else do we have, Bart?
We have a cloud law scholar questioning whether new sovereign cloud offerings from AWS, Microsoft, and Google genuinely shield European data from NSA reach. They bluntly stated that, and I quote, "Unfortunately, none of the three hyperscalers explain how exactly their new measures reduce the risk of US government access, leaving customers to connect the dots." Interesting article. I saw this passing by on LinkedIn. It's from Dave Michels, a professor at. Thought you were going to show it.
Sorry,
professor in the UK somewhere. And he's. So what we've seen, it's a discussion that we've been having over the last years, and a professor at Queen Mary University of London. This discussion on sovereign clouds is a discussion we've been having over the last years, and it is intensified with all the kerfuffle between, let's say, not necessarily between US and Europe, but between US and the rest of the world. The reality is today that the big cloud providers are US providers. And that in Europe, we don't really have serious contenders. We have some contenders, but for most purposes, they are not full contenders.
There was also like announcements from, so even though they are American or American born, let's say, I think there were some American clouds that they saw this shift and they try to, like, subsidiaries, right, to cater to the European.
So what they did is that all three of them, as they try to give basically a sovereign offering in Europe, and either they already created a European entity or they are in the making of creating a European entity. Basically, an entity that is governed by someone in Europe, an entity in Europe, but still offers their cloud services. The article goes a bit into it that the regulations that are in play in the US is that if someone in the US, an employee of a US entity, has remote access to these European entities, he would still be under the obligation to share the data if there is a whatever warrant for it, right? Mm-hmm. It's a warrant under FI SA 702 that states that this should be possible, and it also has reach outside of the US. The problem with that a bit is that just having a European entity doesn't really solve anything if you still have US employees that potentially affects to that, which will probably be the case, right? Because development is probably most of it is in the US. So what they do now is that they have these EKMs, which are basically external key management. So your customers have their own encryption keys, but For some purposes, like these cloud providers will have they ask, can we get your encryption key because we need to index your data, for example, because we need to make it easier to solve. So there are moments where you share this encryption key, and at those moments, if you really like, that's what the article does. It drills down. Like a US employee would have to share this encryption key without informing the user if it comes to, again, like there needs to be a warrant set in place. But it's not, there is not really, the European entity doesn't really solve anything of this. Only full encryption does.
I see. So it's like it's a solution that is there, but it's not, let's say it doesn't solve the whole problem. Let's say it's still...
I think it's the best solution that there is, but at the end of the day, you're still using services by a US provider. I think that is the reality of it. And if shit hits the fan, it still gets to you, right?
Yeah. But like, do we have also, because there are European clouds, right? But from last I heard, like you can do stuff, but it's still... so I never used it, to be clear. But the feeling I get from talking to people that have used it is that it's not as mature, it's not as widespread, it's not, some things are not as smooth, right? But I think that would be...
You're talking about the European providers like
European,
OVH, Scaleways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I guess like that would really solve the problems, I guess, from what I understand. But the experience is not the same.
The experience is not the same, and the offering is probably not as complete.
Yeah. But and when you say not as complete, does it still cover 80%, or does it cover the 40%? Like how?
No, I think it would still. I think it should reach 80%.
Okay, so then it's more like if people are motivated to do it and are okay with living with the inconveniences, it is a viable solution.
It is a viable solution, but it's harder. Like for a lot of reasons, it's harder to do, especially for large corporations, large enterprises. It's harder to find the right skills.
Yeah, that's true.
It's much easier to find someone with experience on AWS than someone with extensive experience on OVH, right? And that's not unsurmountable, but it's these are realities.
Growing pains.
The communities around these three major providers, which are US, the communities are huge, even in the EU.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. That's definitely true.
So interesting one. Not sure what the answer to this is.
Yeah, me neither. Are you optimistic about like? I mean, I think also this became a talking point now because of the US like geopolitical things, right? Like maybe there was a big signal like maybe we shouldn't rely as much. But do you think there's in the Microsoft AWS, it's in their interest, right, to how do you say, to solve quote unquote these issues, right? Are you optimistic that in the future we have a good solution? In the future, I mean, like by the end of the year.
I don't know. I think here it also comes down to willingness of US regulators to allow the big three US cloud providers to provide sovereign services to. I think it really comes down to the US government at this point. And I think the other point of view, like will we ever have a good European contender, is also difficult. Europe is a very segregated market. We've seen EU subsidy projects in the past. We've seen Project Gaia, which was basically the idea to create this cloud offering. Problem with these European subsidy projects, in my eyes, is often that it's a bit too politically correct. Like it's not here we're going to create this entity in wherever it's best geographically, and where because the skills are there, because the knowledge is there, because the legal framework is there, it's going to be that country, and we're going to invest I don't know, 2 billion in that company to grow a cloud provider. No, it's we want to be competitive in the cloud provider space. Is there anyone, governments or any companies in Europe that wants to build this? And then you get a list of 2,000 companies, and then you get subsidies spread across this whole space. And in the end, there's not a lot to show for.
Yeah, you have enough food to feed them and keep them alive, but not to really grow strong.
Yeah, so that's I think unless we see something like a very clear investment in a dedicated entity that needs to become the cloud provider, maybe in one of the existing ones. I think it's going to be hard to really to be a competitor as the European market versus the world in this.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move to the next topic?
Yes.
So this is Galileo's open source agent leaderboard that pits major LLMs against realistic enterprise scenarios, exposing sharp gaps between tool usage and actual task completion. The July update shows that, and I quote, GPT 4.1 leads with an average action completion score 62% across all domains, while rivals like Gemini 2.5 Flash excel only narrow metrics. So this, as I understand, and then correct me if I'm wrong, Bart, Galileo is like a company for observability, monitoring, and all these things, and they created a leaderboard. This is the version 2, and I'm showing here the Git repo for people that are
The
interested.
version 2 was released this week, yeah. That's why.
It was this week, so it's very new.
Very new.
So version 1 was just tool calling, and this version 2 also has, and I quote again, enhanced framework with synthetic dataset generation and simulation engine for evaluation, task completion, and tool calling performance. So it's to evaluate agents, basically.
Yeah, and a bit the premise, it's also in the GitHub README, is that they want to have a leaderboard that is relevant for the agent domain. So they give an example like Klarna. They decided to replace 700 customer service reps with AI, completely backfired. So now they're rehiring humans. Klarna, they save money, but like the customer experience like highly degraded. And what you want to do is to understand, like, if I want to replace someone by an agent, it sounds very nefarious when I put it like that, but if you want to replace a process by an agent, like, how do you know the performance before you flip that switch, right? And that is what that V2 leaderboard tries to do. It's like, instead of testing whether an agent can call the right tools, which is more or less all the benchmarks that are out there on agents, is like, can this agent call the right tools at the right moment? You also, it doesn't stop there. It also like puts the AI through like this real-time scenarios with multi-turn dialogues, complex decision-making to really understand like what is the performance of this agent in this domain, while along the way it also calls some tools. And most of these leaderboards mainly focus on the tool calling part, which you could argue is not really illustrative of real-life performance.
Yeah, I think it's not illustrative, but it is informative, right? Like,
it is informative,
yeah, indeed. Maybe a quick question. You mentioned Klarna, it backfired. Do you think it will backfire for other companies as well?
If you do it too quickly, yes. If you don't understand what is going on, it definitely will.
I think especially for customer-facing stuff, right?
Yeah, I think customer-facing stuff is it really depends on like, if you change something, if you automate a process by using an agent, will it keep the customer experience same level, or will it improve, or will it degrade, right? I think if you don't model this well, if you don't design it well, it's very easy to degrade.
And I think maybe, and as you're saying this, I was thinking that the things that are measurable, it's easy to see that it will get better, like response time, right? How many answers you get per, like those things are easy to measure, and it's like, yeah, it will be better with an agent, duh. But then the things that are a bit harder, like how good was the answer, how thoughtful was the answer, how patient, it's not as much in your face, but that's probably the core of what's a good answer.
It's harder to evaluate, it's a more subjective level to it. Yeah, that I agree with. Yeah.
Indeed, and I think maybe that's also why a lot of, like, maybe I'm not sure, I'm speculating a lot here, but maybe that's why Klarna, at first they really were quick to pull the plug there, but yeah, the things that were harder to measure, that's what.
But I also think like it's not hard to test. Like it's hard to define those tests, like written out. But if you as a person, like you want to test, you want to call Klarna to understand what your next invoice will be. Yeah. Like if you as a person, you call and then you need to explain why you do it, and then at the end, like, okay, then you get a link and then you need to click it. And versus if you talk the same thing to an agent and you immediately get the next invoice estimation back, you're probably going to say, agent is better.
Yeah, indeed.
If it would be reverse, like it's not hard to test that as a person, what the experience is.
Yes, but I also
think it's hard to do it at scale to because it's very subjective, and to understand like what can everybody ask. But I don't think
Yeah,
it's
but
undoable.
no, I agree. I don't think it's undoable, but I also think there's a big pool of questions or scenarios that the what's good or bad is very subjective, and or maybe it's not as easy to. I do feel like there's a group of tasks that is not as easy to evaluate, right? Like maybe like that is very specific, right? It's like you want an invoice estimation for this, but maybe if someone is having an issue and it's a stupid issue or something, and they need to debug with a person, maybe the answers are not going to be very helpful. Like maybe just
Yeah,
going to
but
be
that I agree with. Like things where your agent is not built to have a easy answer, you should
yeah,
immediately forward to a human, because
indeed.
otherwise you as a customer you're gonna get very frustrated.
Indeed, but sometimes I feel like people call because they have a problem, but they don't even know what the problem is.
Hmm.
And if you don't even know what the problem is, then how can you, and then you really need someone to kind of, and then it comes with more human quote unquote qualities of like being patient and being understanding and asking the right questions. And I think for those things, I can see how agents, or if you judging if you prepare something, you don't have a really good plan on how these things go, it can go downhill. Right.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah. Have you run this leaderboard as well? Anything insightful that you got from this leaderboard as well that you didn't see in other places? Like anything that's like, oh wow, now I'm going to start using Gemini 2.5 Flash for because it's really good at this or that.
No, I was surprised to see GPT 4.1 topping the chart, and then actually just below that 4.1 mini, and below that is Sonnet 4. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
very
true. That's
interesting.
true. Yeah.
But to me, these leaderboards are very interesting from the moment that you're building an agent, that you're building a tool-based system, to quickly also have an understanding like what is the latest and greatest, because it probably changed from a month ago, right?
Yeah.
That's why
But I
these
think,
leaderboards are very valuable.
but to be honest, like I think in the beginning when I was playing more with LLMs, is like, which one should I start for this project? And it's like, then you really go like, okay, maybe let's do some research and let's look at leaderboards. But now I feel like I'm at a point that like, man, just pick whatever, and then probably gonna be fine. Just pick one.
Yeah, just pick one of the
The
current state
main
of the art
ones.
ones, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So it's like I think in the beginning I was looking more at these leaderboards, but now I feel like I'm a bit. It's like just pick one. It's fine. Like don't waste so much brain power because one, it may change tomorrow, and two, sometimes the difference between them, like when you like, is not that different. Like I mean, it is different, and I do know this. I prefer some models over others,
I would
but
say it's very different when it comes to tool calling. Like
for tool
from the
calling,
moment you need to depend on tool calling in your chain, like if the performance is not good, like your whole chain can very quickly degrade.
that I agree. But maybe I just haven't touched as many problems like that, right? But for example, 4.1 versus like Claude, right? Like, would you look at a leaderboard or would you just pick Claude?
Probably yes, because 4.1 is very expensive.
Okay. Okay.
But there are like you can also make the argument like I think well we were just discussing Europe. There are still a lot of firms that say we need to use Mistral because it's the only European one. If you look at the benchmark of this, like Mistral is very low in the benchmark, right? Like is that something like do you want to have this lower performance just to have a European based model? Question mark, right? Like you get into these type of discussions then, and for that
Yeah,
it's good
indeed.
to see some actual data to understand like how good is the choice I'm making here.
Yeah. Even if it's just like an informed discussion, right? Now it's
Yeah,
not just he said, she said, I feel like. It's
sure.
more
Yeah,
like, okay, we can get on the same page here.
and to be honest,
Agree.
like if I look at myself when I evaluate the models, it's very much like, oh yeah, I feel this, I feel that, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Maybe one thing that we can look at another time, but there was I listened to on the Changelog podcast actually that they were saying that there was a paper that said that even though developers feel more productive with AI, the study showed that people are less productive with AI.
Hey, yeah,
Um,
I actually saw it passing by. Yeah,
yeah, so something that we can maybe discuss or
yeah.
bring at another time, because I do feel like, yeah, it's like I feel he feels, but at the same time, when someone asks me like, "Hey, can I have access to this because I feel like this?" I'm like, "Come on, man, you feel like give me something here."
Yeah.
It's hard to.
Yeah.
But I get it. I get it. What else do we have?
Maybe a small correction. I was just said that 4.1 is much more expensive than Sonnet. It's not true. It's 4.5 that is very much more expensive, but it's not even on the benchmark.
Okay. And ChatGPT 5 is coming out soon, I think. No, I think I read it somewhere.
A lot of rumors, but more rumors than in the last months. But we hear rumors about GPT-5 every week, I guess.
That's how they stay relevant. They just whispers around. Shall we move on?
Yes. So AWS again.
Sorry, real quick. I saw where I saw this. I read it actually on the previous article that we covered about the old science, the Math Olympiad. It says here, by the way, we're releasing GPT-5 soon, and we're excited to try it. So that's another. That's where I got that information there.
Let's see.
Sorry, you were saying.
So in other news, AWS is previewing S3 Vectors, a new bucket type that stores embeddings directly in S3 and promises big savings on vector search workloads. As AWS puts it, Amazon S3 Vectors is the first cloud object store with native support to store large vector datasets and provide sub-second query performance, cutting costs by up to 90%. Interesting topic.
Yes.
So Amazon S3, probably most people have heard of. It's being used a lot to basically store files in buckets, right? With a lot of cool utility functions around that, to search for files, to get temporary links to files. You can optimize your storage there. Is it cold storage? Is it hot storage? To optimize your cost. So Amazon S3 very very famous. Now they have S3 Vectors, and you can look at it a little bit like a new type of bucket type, specifically for vector embeddings. So vector embeddings, I think people that are in this space probably know that this is like a high dimensional representation of a document or of an image or of whatever. Most of the times it's a document, the easiest to reason about. And you can store this now in S3 vector buckets. What you will often do is that you have you have maybe the vector embedding for PDF A in this vector bucket, but you have the actual PDF still in another bucket, so you can make this link between the two. They promise that there is very fast query performance, very cheap query performance as well. And that the storage costs are also very low, which is S3 typically known for, because you basically only pay for it when you're streaming it to there or getting data from there or querying it. You can choose your own embedding model. So you can say, okay, I'm going to transform this data to an embedding and I'm going to store it. But they also, via Amazon Bedrock, you can also use a utility there that embeds it for you. So it's cool to see. So typically embedding, so vector databases, they are typically more or less quote unquote standard databases that are optimized to also search for embeddings, to index embeddings. So think about, for example, in the simplest case, like you have a Postgres database with a vector extension, and then you can store embeddings. And here, embeddings becomes sort of like, and it's not probably not under the hood, not exactly, but embeddings becomes just another file that you drop in your bucket. Amazon makes it very easy to query and search these things.
Yeah, I think it's interesting I think it's nice. I'm excited about this. Let's see. I mean, performance and all these things, and can you query things nicely? But it's something that, you saw like before you had stuff on a database, then you can just drop stuff on a bucket and just easily find it and all these things. Now you can do that with vectors. Which I think is a natural progression, but I hadn't thought of it yet, actually. So very, very cool. I also think that maybe even like the snowflakes and the other things, they're going to start doing something like this as well. I think as I understand, there's a whole family of platforms that separate compute and storage, right? To make basically things cheaper because, like you said, storage is cheap. I hadn't seen that with vectors because I think to search vectors as well, it's not as straightforward. But so this seems like the first step there. So it's still in preview. I'm very curious to see the first use case on this. Like people saying like, we did this and we saved this much money and this is really good and this is that. So I think it's really, really nice. Yeah. Have you played a lot with the vector databases, Bart?
Not that much, to be honest. No.
No. Yeah, me neither actually. But I would have imagined that I would have played more by now, to be honest. Like if you're playing with all the AI things. But yeah.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
very typical for the rack space, of course, when you're making rack based solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think aside from that, I feel like I don't know. I mean, I understand the premise and why it's useful, but I don't know. I just
So
imagine that if you're doing more stuff with AI, you would really
yeah,
you really touch into vector databases sooner or later.
when I well, my job's changed a bit over the last years, of course, but I also I was but also changes like content length of these models. When I first started doing this a few years ago, the content length was so small that you almost had to build these vector stores even for, let's say you have a large PDF of 200 pages, you need to build a small, maybe in memory vector store for this. But now this content length has become so big, it's not really an issue anymore, right? So it's maybe also plays into this.
Yeah, that's true. We worked around it,
Yeah.
right, in a lot of ways. Cool. And shall we move on to our last topic?
Yes, let's do that.
So this is about CLIs. Developer Ryan argues that command line tools and APIs need redesigning so LLM agents can navigate them without context window thrashing and or endless loops. He opens with plain reminder that, and I quote, "We need to augment our command line tools and design APIs so they can be better used by LLM agents." Then shares fixes on smarter doc strings and Git wrappers. So this is an article that I thought it was also, it resonated with a lot of the stuff that I've encountered, let's say, playing with Claude Code. So one of the things that he mentions, for example, a lot of the times when he's actually using Claude Code, you see that it actually uses head, so to see the top of a file, but then it limits the first 100 lines. And
Mhm.
that's because the context window of these models are limited, right? But it's actually, so Claude Code, it'll learn to do it. Like it just knows that it can just reduce the context window like this. But for a lot of these tools, the first 100 lines is going to be useless. Like it's not going to help you. It's not like the top is going to be what you're
Feature.
looking
Yeah.
for, right? So actually, in the end, like he also talks a bit more like how we need to maybe rethink a bit, or maybe give like a summarized view on these things, and then let the model do follow-up queries after that instead of dumping everything in one place, because this is not going to help the models. Another thing that it also said here, like the code clean on his project, he has a lot of pre-commit hooks, so not using the pre-commit package necessarily, and and this is something that I definitely seen is like the loop of the project. So he makes a change and then he builds the projects and he's okay. Then he run tests and he fails. And then he tries to fix the test and he cannot fix the test. And then instead of fixing the test, it just says, okay, let's just skip the commit hooks. Just to no verify, which is something that happened to me a few times. And then what I did in Claude is to just, because you can kind of memorize some instructions, right? I just said just never skip this, even though there's not a, how do you say, it's not a strong guarantee that it won't skip,
Mhm.
right? It's just on the system prompt. So actually what he did, he actually wrapped the git command. So every time there's git commit no verify, it would actually fail. And he gives a more context to the agent saying, hey, you try to skip the commit hooks, uh, redo this, but don't skip them, right? So things like that. He also went to, I thought it was funny. Um, After that, he said it kind of worked, but the model started to actually try to change the pre-commit hooks to delete it. So instead of actually trying to fix the code to pass the pre-commit hooks, the model was trying to add the commit hooks from the .git slash hook slash pre-commit um, to to bypass these things. So basically, like I won't have pre-commit hooks issues if there are no pre-commit hooks.
Mhm.
So he actually had to change the edit settings from these models as well. And then he talked more about the information architecture. So basically, it was in the user experience was how things are designed and how we need to basically rethink a bit. Again, another example he gives is cargo build head N100. Basically, Claude was when he was working with Rust now, and when he was building the project, instead of having all the build logs, Claude would just take the first 100 lines, which a lot of times is not useful. A lot of times the errors didn't happen on the first 100 lines. So, and then his solution here was to uh, kind of cache a bit what are the things that happen. So because the build command is also very expensive, right? So then if the model tries to do these things again to try it, so when he was coding, what he was explaining is that the model would actually try to run this a few times to understand what the issue was. And every time you run it would be very expensive. So he also suggests that having something like caching the logs and just displaying it again would already be helpful. And then he talks about some other things as well. Like sometimes he would try to run command on the wrong directory, and then the model would basically try to run the command on every directory. And he has like some small wrappers to say this is the directory, and maybe you want to move to this or that directory, etc., etc., etc. So a lot of these things were very relatable to me using Cloud Code as well. I think a lot of these problems are also problems I recognize. Like a lot of the times I want to, I don't know, I'm trying to extract text from this page, and I noticed that every time you truncate it, even when I was trying to inspect it, and I think it's because a lot of the times the CLI wasn't made for these things, right? It was made for humans. But I'm also, and one of the things he even suggested at the very end is to have CLIs for LLMs. So like, not CLIs, but terminals for LLMs. Not sure if I'll go that far, but I do feel like there's a lot of room for improvement for all these things, right? Have you experienced anything like this before, Bart?
Well, I went to the article and I was a little bit confused about what the actual point is that the article is making, because it's about retaking CLI interfaces, where I think there's an argument you can make, but a lot of the things that he touches upon is more his AI-assisted tooling workflow that is not working for him. Within that workflow, tool usage that is not being done selected correctly by the model. Like if your model always does a hat 100 to only show the first 100 lines, I mean, that's wrong tool usage, right?
Yeah, true. But I think it's like a lot of times in the CLI, it's just like the model just uses bash for everything, right? Like for example, for Claude, I haven't actually attached MCP servers yet because
So if you look, for example, Cloud Code, what Cloud Code does, in my eyes, very well, it makes it different with a lot of the other ones. It uses ripgrep, which is a regex tool to find text and to really line in a line-oriented way. When you see a call for RG, it's ripgrep. And what I do believe is that if you have these command line interfaces like ripgrep that are valuable as a tool, I think it is very valuable to also have strong documentation on that tool for an LLM to correctly operate it.
Yeah, but like it's not just document, because so I agree, but I also know that a lot of this documentation, like if you go to something help or man git, you get like a lot of stuff, right? You get very detailed. I mean, I definitely experienced this as a user, right? You have to really scroll and like really find the right thing. And sometimes I feel like for the LLM, I can see how that could be a problem.
If the documentation is too much, you mean?
If the documentation is too much, or like depending on the way that it's structured, right? Because even if you do a grep on it, sometimes you may not find exactly what you're looking for. You may find fragments of what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, I think what ideally you want is that it's either condensed enough to be in your system prompt for your AI-assisted coding session, or it was in your training data for the LLM.
I think and then maybe my first thought was you probably want it to be condensed, and then have like, for example, like I don't know, if you're looking for this class of things, then you can run this help X or Y, and then you'll give you more information on this. But kind of like have a bit of a tree structure, right? Like this is the very general, and if you want this, go there, go there, go there. That probably would, I would imagine that will help LLMs with these things. Right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, if you just use the help command of a CLI, if a human can understand an LLM that has the good performance on tool usage, should probably be able to understand it as well.
But then you expose it as a tool, really, like because I think
just the bash command, right? Like a command in your terminal.
Yeah, true. But wait, maybe what do you mean by like just a command on your terminal? Like just like a user would.
Just like a user would, yeah. Like git command, like your Cloud Code can call git commit, for example. It can call RG, it can call cat this file and show the first 100 lines. But it's just calling tools on your terminal, right?
True.
Commands.
But then I think, but then I think the documentation on these tools, yeah, that's what you're saying, haven't seen that. Well, I haven't actually seen as much Claude call the help command
Oh, I
for the
haven't seen it
tools.
either. No, that's true. I agree.
So maybe maybe that's another thing. Yeah, maybe that's true.
But
Maybe
it
also
only makes sense when you are in a project where you are very specific about use this tool for that reason. Then it becomes relevant to do these things. I haven't been in this situation
yeah, then
because
you
when
have
it's typically I use either like for whatever language the build command, and that's very standard, or like a hit command or something.
yeah.
But I think you see Claude doing this with RG, which is like their solution to correctly replace lines of code in files.
But then
So I
probably
think that
instructed Claude.
I think they either instructed or even fine-tuned the model
I see.
to work very well with RG.
And I guess if you're instructed, then just in your instructions, they need to be clear, right? But you don't need
Yeah,
to
yeah.
worry as much about the documentation necessarily.
And I think a lot of the other things in the article is really about workflow and what works and what doesn't work, and like the whole whack-a-mole thing. Everybody has probably been in this situation. It's also like how free do you let the model go? Because if you say, okay, just accept everything and I'll check in half an hour, and then it probably did. I go hit commit, no verify. But if you say, okay, code edits are fine, but bash commands I want to verify before you do them, like you can still have this you can define this threshold of control that you have, right?
Yeah, indeed. And I definitely do the auto approve everything, and then I'm like, okay, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Maybe one thing, last thing to close this up as well. One possible solution that the Cloud Code actually has is the hooks. I think we talked about this before, or no?
Not on the show yet.
Not on the show yet. But basically, like, so it's, the way I think of it, at least, is kind of like you have pre-commit hooks, but basically you have code that runs at different steps of your Git. Like pre-commit is right before you commit and all these things. And with hooks reference, you can also add these things there, right? So you could say run all the pre-commit hooks right after the tool is done. So there's pre-to use, post to use, and I think it's like stop or something, or sub-agent stop or something. But basically you can say always run these hooks after the agent is done doing something, right?
Yeah.
And in that case, there's no, I think it's one way that you can tackle a lot of these problems, right? That the model is not going to bypass because it cannot. It's basically hard coded there. So yeah.
These can be very, very valuable. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. I definitely want to. I looked into it a bit, but in the end I was like, okay, I'll just put on the memorization, like on the system prompt kind of. But I think it's something that I'll start using more, because
And
thinking about it now,
this actually allows you to do more to lower your threshold versus what you want to verify, because you can have like hooks that say like after doing this change, make sure to run the linter or make sure to run the tests, or I want to make sure that this dependency is never used in my project. Like you can add these type of hooks, right?
yeah,
You could be a bit
indeed.
more opinionated about the actual output without verifying every step.
Which I think is good, right? I mean, I think if you're opinionated, when you do look at the code, you're gonna, hopefully, right, you're gonna see something that you recognize more easily, and then that's gonna overall improve the experience for you and all. So very cool. And I think that was it. Anything else you want to say on this? Okay, that's it then. Like we said, we'll keep everyone posted. We may change a bit. We'll see how it all goes.
Yeah,
but
we've quite some. So we have holiday season coming up. We've quite some ideas. I think we have this weekly session. We have some ideas on inviting guests. Actually, I already have quite an interesting lineup there. We also have some ideas on, like, let's say, a key insight, short explainers on topics. Like we had the discussion earlier on agent to agent. Like maybe it would be interesting to share like a 3-minute video on what is agent to agent and what can you use it for. How does it compare to MCP? So we have a lot of these things that we're working on. We hope to make that a bit more concrete a few weeks from now, so that everybody knows a bit what they can expect for the second half of this year.
Exactly. Yeah. Indeed. So stay tuned. If anyone has any comments, questions, or suggestions as well, feel free to leave a comment on any YouTube channel or send us a message or anything. We'll definitely appreciate it. And while you're at it, if you want to leave a review.
Yeah. And thanks for all the love on our social channels.
Yes.
Very much appreciated. And if you have not yet, then please subscribe.
Exactly. All right. Thank you, Bart. Thanks, everyone.
See you
See
next
you next
time.
time.
Thank you, Milo.
Ciao.
Bye.